On the night of October 1st, 1910, a blast ripped through downtown Los Angeles. It wasn't just loud, it was apocalyptic. The ground shook, buildings cracked, fires swallowed what remained. People screamed as metal, stone, and glass rained from the sky. Within seconds, the proud Los Angeles Times building had turned into a tomb. 21 men were dead, dozens more were injured, and before the dust had even settled, the city was plunged into a mystery that would stretch across state lines, in the heart of a growing war between powerful capitalists and angry laborers. This wasn't just a bombing. It was the deadliest act of domestic terrorism in Los Angeles history, until nearly a century later. And it was just the beginning. By 1910, America was on edge. The country was growing, building, expanding, but underneath the booming factories and rising cities was a growing resentment. Workers were being pushed to their limits. Long hours, low pay, dangerous conditions, no protections. Unions started to form. Workers began to fight back. And when they did, big business pushed harder. Companies brought in strikebreakers, hired private guards, paid off police. People died. One of the fiercest battlegrounds in this growing labor war was Los Angeles. Los Angeles wasn't like New York or Chicago. It was anti-union to the core. At the front of that fight stood one man, General Harrison Gray Otis, publisher of the Los Angeles Times and one of the most powerful men in the West. Otis hated unions. He believed they were un-American, dangerous, and he wasn't quiet about it. In fact, the Times ran story after story attacking organized labor. Otis called union workers labor traitors and enemies of industry. The Los Angeles Times building became a symbol of anti-union power and a target. In Indianapolis, hundreds of miles away, a man named James B. McNamara was growing more and more radical. He was part of the Iron Workers Union, a group that had been locked in a brutal struggle with employers across the country. James had a brother, John J. McNamara, Secretary-Treasurer of the International Association of Bridge and Structural Iron Workers. Together, they believed peaceful protests weren't enough anymore. They believed it was time to strike fear into the heart of industry. The McNamaras weren't just planning a protest. They were planning something much darker. They started sending dynamite to job sites, unmarked boxes, time fuses. There were dozens of explosions across the country in 1909 and 1910, but no one had been caught. And then they set their sights on Los Angeles. James McNamara boarded a train west. He carried a small suitcase. Inside, dynamite and a clockwork detonator. On the night of September 30th, he walked toward the Los Angeles Times building. He was calm, steady. Security was light. Nobody suspected anything. He found the alley behind the building, crept into the press room's delivery entrance, and there, behind a pile of ink barrels and paper rolls, he left the bomb, set to go off just after 1 a.m. Then he walked away. At 1:07 a.m., the bomb exploded. A massive blast tore through the building. Fire followed. Steel girders collapsed. Walls crumbled. Dozens of workers, typesetters, printers, editors were trapped inside. Some were killed instantly. Others were crushed or burned. The explosion was so strong it shattered windows across the street. Smoke filled the night sky. The Times building was destroyed. And the city of Los Angeles woke up in terror. Panic swept the city. People thought it was an accident, maybe a gas leak. But General Otis knew better. He wasn't in the building that night. He had taken a trip to Mexico. But when he returned and saw the wreckage, he made it clear. This was no accident, he said. This was murder by Union hands. The press followed his lead. The story spread like wildfire. Newspapers across the country screamed headlines. Times building bombed. 21 dead in LA massacre. Labor terrorism strikes again. Police began to investigate, but they had no leads, no witnesses, no clues, until they got help from a private detective. Enter William J. Burns, a former Secret Service agent turned private eye. He was sharp, ruthless, and hired directly by Otis and the Times. Burns started digging, traveling, interviewing, following clues, and slowly a pattern emerged. He connected the LA bombing to other unsolved blasts across the country, and in each case he found one thing in common: the Iron Workers Union. Burns zeroed in on Indianapolis. That's where the union's headquarters was, and that's where he found the McNamara brothers. It took months, but eventually, with the help of spies and informants, Burns got what he needed: evidence, bomb-making tools, letters, witnesses. On April 22, 1911, he struck. The McNamara brothers were arrested. James B. McNamara, the bomber, John J. McNamara, the financier. They were brought back to Los Angeles, and the city braced for one of the biggest trials in American history. The arrest shocked the country. To many, the McNamaras were heroes, working men standing up to corrupt power. To others, they were cold-blooded killers. Labor unions rallied behind them. Massive donations poured in for their defense. The famous lawyer Clarence Darrow took their case. He believed the brothers were innocent, but the evidence was overwhelming. Dynamite residue, witness testimony, secret letters, a map drawn by James himself. Then came a twist. Just before the trial began, James McNamara confessed. He admitted he had planted the bomb. He said he didn't mean to kill anyone, that he thought the building would be empty. But 21 people were dead. His brother John admitted to helping fund the plot. Both brothers pleaded guilty. The courtroom fell silent. James McNamara was sentenced to life in prison. John got 15 years. But the confession didn't end the war, it deepened it. Union members were crushed. Many felt betrayed. Clarence Darrow, once a hero to the working class, faced bribery charges, accused of trying to buy off jurors. He denied it and was eventually acquitted, but his reputation was forever damaged. The labor movement lost one of its most public battles, and the country moved on, but the scars remained. The Los Angeles Times was rebuilt. General Otis lived on as a symbol of victory over labor violence. But the truth was more complicated. Looking back, the 1910 Los Angeles Times bombing wasn't just a crime. It was a warning sign. It showed how far people were willing to go, how desperation, fear, and fury can lead catastrophe. The McNamara brothers believed they were striking a blow for workers' rights. But in the end, they set back the labor movement for years, and they left behind a trail of fire, death, and grief. Today, the spot where the Times building once stood is a busy part of downtown LA. People walk past it every day, unaware the night it became a battlefield. But history remembers, because some crimes aren't just about guilt. They're about the cost of being unheard for too long. If you found this story as shocking as we did, make sure to subscribe to Stay a Crime for more dark, untold true crime stories. Hit the like button, share with a friend, and drop a comment below. What do you think? Were the McNamara's terrorists or desperate revolutionaries? Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, every crime leaves a mark.